This is a Bureau of Labor Statistics question. You mentioned the Bureau earlier that you were not involved in trying to manage their numbers, of course, but we would like their numbers to be accurate. So in December of 2017, there was a Wall Street Journal article entitled 25 Cities Adding and Losing the Most Jobs in 2017. That article ran again in USA Today. It listed Cape Girardeau, Missouri as the #1 area in job loss for 2017. Bad enough to hear that if it's true, worse to hear it if it's not true. I'm sure that the Cape Girardeau Chamber President, John Maynor, would like me to be sure and mention today that it wasn't accurate. All of their local information indicated it wasn't accurate, but there really appears to have been, at that point at least, no recourse at the Bureau of Labor Statistics to say anything about this. So I think what we found out by March was that the numbers were released and corrected, but clearly a thought is put in people's minds about what's happening to both their local economy and people looking at that economy as a place they might want to move to or might want to invest in. As it turned out, they had job growth, as the local university statistics indicated and their own statistics indicated they did. So I guess the question is, can you tell us what we can do to have more transparency there, to have some recourse if cities want to dispute their data, and what we need to do to moving forward to be sure that we don't have communities listed as losing jobs on preliminary statistics when it turns out that they were a community, as that community has for years, that were gaining jobs.
Mr. Chairman, having been someone that sees headlines about the department sometimes and scratches one's head saying, that's contrary to fact. I not only empathize, but fully empathize with the president of the Chamber of Commerce who was put in that situation. And it's a very bad situation to be put in, because once that headline's out there, it's very, very difficult to retract it. I know that our staff at BLS and yours have discussed this. And one of the issues here is when you have preliminary data, that data as a statistical matter will vary, and while sometimes it's close, sometimes it's not. And I see this often, for example, with the unemployment numbers, where there are revisions, and the revisions will actually show that there was more employment than we thought, but the headlines never pick that up. One thing that I think is particularly important is the commissioner for BLS has been pending on the floor, and in having leadership, they've had no confirmed leadership now for several months, and so I would encourage that we move on that commissioner, because with a commissioner in place, it is much easier to look at those types. Are we reporting preliminary data too early? Should we wait a little bit longer to make sure that it is the data in fact? Because what happened in this case, as I'm told, is they reported preliminary data. The media ignored the fact that it's preliminary and just assumed that it was final. By the time the final data was reported, the number was corrected. It was just a statistical variance. But those statistical variances have consequence.
Well, and I think what happened with that statistical variance is they did targeted interviews with specific employers, right, who, for whatever reason, those employers had lost jobs, but the community hadn't come close to
Correct.
Losing jobs. And we all have seen the growth numbers that turn out to be one way or another differently a month later than they were, the economic growth numbers, the unemployment numbers. That has some impact. I think it has more impact if you're talking about a specific community or a specific employer, because there may be some reason to rush preliminary numbers out in a greater context. I really can't imagine what the reason would be, the merit would be to have preliminary numbers that may very well be wrong in in a more specific context. That would be my advice on that. And your point is well taken that you need some help over there. And I think we finally, after 11 months on the job, you now have one confirmed nominee that the Senate has, and that's a problem of ours, and we'd accept that. However, this is a problem that was in December of, what was December of last year? It's a fairly recent problem.
It's, you know, it is a substantial problem, you know, when it impacts a city, because it's hard for the city to forget that headline. And so one of the difficulties is I am hesitant as secretary to get into the statistical methodology of a statistical agency. And I know you've acknowledged that, but having a confirmed head of BLS, I think, would be helpful.
It would be helpful. This may require a community visit on your part or something, Ms. Secretary. I don't know how they'll be able to recover otherwise. So Senator Baldwin, followed by Senator Murphy.